So I was just browsing Microsoft News. Apparently, there's been a big derailment in India, railway derailment in the state of Odisha, up to 120 people killed. So major disaster there. Um, I hope the wounded can get treatment, and yeah, I can imagine it's a horrendous scene. 120 deaths. I think that's the worst railway accident in the world for some time. Um, aviation's improved, but railways can still be dangerous, particularly in India, which is very heavy usage. Of course, earlier this year there was an accident in Greece. Now, that's not what the video is about. I'm just mentioning in passing because it was just breaking news. Um, so my thoughts are with the victims of that. But I want to talk about an article that I came across about one of the funders of Just Stop Oil, and it's the sort of thing I think that would really drive people crazy because it's basically the definition of elitist arrogance, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute, but I'm just going to read out the report. It's not very long, so please bear with me. And as always, I'll put a link to this. This is from PA Media, and the report's by Ted Hennessy. PA, actually, it was posted yesterday. Hollywood film director to triple donations to Just Stop Oil over weekend. Hollywood film director Adam McKay has pledged to triple donations to Just Stop Oil over the weekend, the group said. This is coming from them. McKay, who made Netflix film Don't Look Up, climate change satire. I watched that one. It was with Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio, as well as Step Brothers and The Big Short. Said he stands with the protesters, praising them for waking up sleeping governments. He will triple donations sent to Just Stop Oil, known for disrupting traffic and sporting events, pound for pound, until 10 a.m. on Sunday. From his mansion in California, no doubt. McKay said the scientific reality is we will hit 1.5 degrees Celsius of global heating in the next 18 to 24 months, which should greatly alarm each and every person on this planet. I stand with those taking action to defend the climate. They're doing nothing of the sort, actually. To wake up the world's sleeping governments to the terrifying scale of the catastrophe we are now living through. It comes after British businessman Dale Vince, a major Labour Party donor, vowed to double all money given to the group over a 48-hour period on Wednesday. On Friday evening, he said a total of £340,000 had been raised. He said on Twitter, "This is what we did after the right wing mudslinging." The tweet came amid controversy in the Labour Party over financial support from Mr. Vince, who is also a key donor to Just Stop Oil. Sir Keir Starmer has previously condemned the activists, describing them as wrong and arrogant, and senior Conservatives, including Party Chairman Greg Hands, have called on the Labour leader to hand back money given by Mr Vince, arguing it legitimises the group's tactics. Just Stop Oil protesters were able to disrupt the Gallagher Premiership rugby final at Twickenham between Saracens and Sale last weekend, and on Thursday the England cricket team's bus was delayed on its way to Lords, and that's the end of the report. Um, it's not really surprising that they've continued to be funded by the likes of Adam McKay. I'm not saying him specifically, it's news to me in the last few days that he has been a funder, but I mean, not surprising that it's powerful forces behind their funding. I mean, you have to ask, why is it that people who get perpetually arrested, they keep going back? And one of the hardcore activists, Edred Whittingham, he literally has a crowdfunding source where he has different categories of disruption. And, he's actually quoting the figures like, if you want me to disrupt a sporting event, that's so much money, like a tenner. If you want me to get arrested or, this action will result in arrest. And he's clearly done his homework insofar as what the consequences are. And that's the thing about these people. When they're sort of legitimized as protesters, that implies that they're people who are angry about a particular policy or issue, and they're protesting outside a government building or on that specific thing. What they are really is hardcore activists. I basically think they're criminals, and I think some of their actions are definitely borderline terrorism, domestic terrorism. Now, I've just watched the film United 93, and I don't want to digress here about the 9/11 hijackers. When I say they're borderline terrorists, I'm not saying they're like that. They're not going to strap suicide bombs to themselves or crash planes into towers. They're not that sort of graphic, violent terrorism. But I do think that they are definitely borderline with their basically threats towards the government to, hold the government to ransom, and by extension, hold the country to ransom. Whatever you think of the government, it's democratically elected. If people don't agree with the government, they have the, right to vote them out. That's how democracy works. These groups have a complete contempt for democracy. Back to the source. McKay, I know some of his work. I enjoyed the Anchorman film, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite insofar as I love film. I watch Hollywood films. McKay's one of the big names in Hollywood. The Anchorman films are funny. He's done a lot of collaboration with Will Ferrell. I'd be a liar if I said I didn't enjoy some of his films, like the Anchorman films. The Big Short I haven't seen. Just look up. It was okay. I've seen better. I'm a big fan of DiCaprio, and it was all right. It was too glaringly obvious what it was about. I think, if I recall, DiCaprio was sort of this scientist who wasn't getting traction, or rather, he was he was the one who was getting traction, and his colleague Jennifer Lawrence wasn't, and they were warning about an impending disaster. It was actually a meteorite, but of course, this was a sort of a reference to the threat of global warming and climate change. Whatever you think of the subject, um, and I don't consider myself a climate change denier, I have to keep adding this caveat. What people like Adam McKay just don't grasp is that the utterly obnoxious tactics of these groups are doing nothing to change policy. This Conservative government hasn't stopped licenses for oil drilling, and the only legislation they've passed in relation to such groups is legislation that's, toughening the resolve to take action against them, like the Public Order Bill. And I'm pleased to say the police are finally getting tough with them, dragging them off the streets, which they should have been doing at the start. I think, I think the police handling of this could have been a lot better. They say their hands were tied, but I think it could have been a lot more robust. Um, because I don't really buy that their hands were tied. I think in too many cases, when they were offering cups of tea, the eco warriors, that's not a case of their hands being tied. That was a case of choice. Um, the galling thing about this is, he's funding them from California, so there's basically nothing we could do in this country about that. Except I would like to see, following the German example, freezing their bank accounts. Now, probably there'd be a lot of legal bureaucracy to have to go through. But if there was a way to do that, like a court order or something, I think it would be a very effective method, because arrests are all very well and they should be arrested, but they'll keep going back. They'll be arrested, they'll be booked, they might even do some prison time. But these people are extremists. They are hardcore activists. And I think they take pride in being arrested because it makes them feel that they're martyrs. Um, I think there's something rather sinister about them. They're utter contempt for the rest of us. They pontificate about doing this for the future, but they have a contempt for this generation. Mackay, says that it's about saving the planet, and every single person should be alarmed. But he needs to speak to the ordinary people whose lives they're messing with, and by extension, he is messing with by funding them. Powerful millionaire donors like him and this other guy, Vince, they need to be dragged into the real world, by which I mean they need to be in the shoes of people directly disrupted by Just Stop Oil. But you can be damn sure Adam McKay isn't going to be, when no doubt he's flying on his private jet. I hope that someone really picks him out and finds his hypocrisy, because it wouldn't be too hard to find a Hollywood executive like that practicing hypocrisy, and I would love for him to be exposed and that to be thrown in his face. I'd love him to be humiliated, put on the spot. You know, this is the sort of thing that infuriates people about, what some will call a Hollywood elite. That they pontificate on issues. They think they're being so damn righteous, but really, it's so detached from what the lives of ordinary people. There are celebrities who are more directly involved in that. They will directly join protests. Two examples I can think of is Emma Thompson, who joined Extinction Rebellion, and more recently, the former wildlife presenter, whose name, Chris something, his name. I've gone blank, brain freeze. Chris Packham. He's joined Just Stop Oil. You know, they're public figures. They have a voice. And what are they doing? They're choosing to join undemocratic, counterproductive organisations. Adam McKay, with his millions, if he really cares about this issue, he could do something productive. He could support small businesses. He could donate money to green businesses. He could donate money to climate scientists. He could be doing a lot of things, for replanting trees. There's a lot of things he can do that can help the planet that would be very much in the ethos of what he claims to care about, that doesn't involve funding criminals who are hurting the public. So Adam McKay, yeah, I can think of a few colourful things to say to the guy. If I was at some sort of press conference, I'm afraid I'd probably lose my temper because this is so typical of the sort of elitist bubble that these people live in. I mean, Adam McKay does not understand reality. He does not understand what it's like for ordinary people having to put up with them. And I know there isn't, as far as I know, an American equivalent. There has to be. But if they are there, they're a lot less active. Maybe because American cops don't mess around. Maybe that's a reason. But here in Europe, in Britain, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in France, and Italy, we've been putting up with these extremists for a long, long time. So to read that an American film tycoon living thousands of miles away is funding them is infuriating. As for the Labour donor, I agree. Labour should return that money. If Starmer really, understands public anger about Just Stop Oil, they should do the right thing and return the money. Because coming from someone like Vince, who is also funding Just Stop Oil, I agree. It legitimises their tactics. It legitimises him as a donor. He needs to be persona non grata in the Labour Party. Starmer should take a tough stance and say, "No, thanks, we don't want your money because you're funding extremism." Um, it really infuriates me, quite honestly, because these powerful tycoons, they could be using that money for something positive. Instead, they're choosing to fund extremism. Um, there's not much we could do about Adam McKay except that, I've made this video, but in the case of the UK, Mr. Vince, I think, there could be something done about that if there's any indication, for example, that these groups do escalate and, they really go to full on terrorist sabotage, then I think he should be held accountable for basically enabling it. I don't know what the legal term would be, but if this escalates, and I fear that it might, um, you know, because really the idiots who wear those orange jackets, they're kind of the front line, they're the foot soldiers. In a way, it is the powerful tycoons behind them, and it's someone like Roger Hallam, who's one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion. People like that, there needs to be a hell of a lot more scrutiny of them. Um, So Adam McKay, I might just boycott his films and protest. Another film I saw of his, Vice, a biopic about Dick Cheney, was so utterly biased. I mean, the guy is clearly pretty left wing, and that's fine. But Vice is an example of his politics coming through. It had everything short of Darth Vader music every time Dick Cheney appeared on screen. Um, so yeah, it's the sort of thing that really infuriates people about Hollywood elites.